Sometimes life comes in cycles. Moments of highs, moments of lows, and back again. And Aaliyah explores this concept in her new album, Ciclica. Relationships, love, self, and home are explored in this new episode of You Talk.
First of all, thanks, Ryan, for having me. My name is Analia. I am Dominican born and raised, but I moved to Toronto almost 13 years ago to pursue the career of the performing arts, so singing and acting mainly. And I'm happy to say I'm doing the thing, so that's awesome. Yeah, I started like doing my solo music. I was with a band before in 2015 called Santerias, and then in 2020 before the pandemic, actually, I had already kind of decided, okay, this is the year I'm going to start releasing my own solo music because I have been writing songs since I was like 5. Not all of them are worth releasing, but so finally,
I
yeah.
mean, it's still impressive. 5 years old, already getting into
Yeah,
it.
mind you, like they were kid songs, but my mom would be like, "You wrote that?" Like, wow, like I would come up with like, yeah,
Everyone
like,
has to start somewhere, right?
yeah, yeah. So in 2020, I was like, I wanna like the band that I was with, the songs I was writing didn't fit what we were doing, and I don't know why, but at that time, I felt like I needed to express that it was time to be more vulnerable, and so I started releasing music in 2020, and then finally this year, thanks to funding from Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, and Factor, I was able to release my debut album, Ciclica.
I think that's just so interesting, like how sometimes music doesn't just gel
Hmm.
with you. Sometimes you're
Hmm.
like, what is it about this? What is it about this specific medium that it just doesn't like resonate
Yeah, yeah,
with yourself? But it's good that you acknowledge that because you never want to start going through a musical career and you're like 10, 15 years down the road and you're like, this is draining me. Like, I'm not enjoying this
yeah.
sort of thing. I don't have a passion for it anymore.
No, no, no. And it's a tough career on its own. So if you don't love what you're doing, what's the point? Like, really, what's the point? So yeah, no, I'm at a point where I love exploring and fusing things. And you're as you heard, and hopefully everyone that's watching and listening will listen to the album. It's very eclectic, because that's my jam. I don't like being in one box.
I can relate to that
Hmm.
wholeheartedly. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's
Hmm.
start with just the name of
Yeah.
it. When I was just looking it up,
Hmm.
it means cyclical.
Yeah.
And then you talk about falling in love, homesickness, mourning, letting go. So
Hmm.
tell me
Hmm.
about that process. Why is this the story you wanted to tell?
So basically, all of these songs came up at different times in my life, different moments, and they were never written with me thinking I'm gonna make an album and the album will be called Ciclica. Actually, the concept came after. So basically, I had all these beautiful songs. I'm calling my own music beautiful, but obviously, if I didn't think it was beautiful, I wouldn't release it. But modesty aside, but what I'm trying to say is that I had all these songs, and there's a bunch of other songs that aren't in the album that are written, and I chose the songs that to me at the moment I they just resonated with me the most, and it felt like messages that I wanted to say now. And those 10 songs and the 3 interludes were chosen, and then at that point I was like, well, actually the interludes came after, but I started thinking, what's the common denominator with these songs, obviously other than me. And I realized, okay, I sing a lot about love and I sing a lot about letting go. And then there's a few songs that I write about home, like, well, like where I was born and raised, Dominican Republic. And it took time to name it. I'm not gonna lie, like it took time. I kept thinking there's like different themes. What do they have in common other than me, other than me, other than my life? And then I was thinking, my gosh, all of these things, I find that the reason why I keep writing about them is because they come in cycles for me. Like I have moments where I am very nostalgic, even though I've been here for almost 13 years, and then I'm okay, and then I'm like, yep, Toronto's home, Canada's home, it's fine. And then it comes back again, that nostalgia. It's like a cycle. And same thing with love. I find that falling in love, or like just like that euphoria of love, even if you love your partner, you're not necessarily like head over heels all the
Yeah,
time.
The
Yeah.
honeymoon phase isn't always there.
Yeah, but it can come back. Yeah. So all that, and then letting go is like, there's people in your life that they're sometimes they're just there for a part of your life, for a stage, and you have to learn to let go when they don't want to be part of it anymore, or when you need to let go of them because it's just not gelling anymore. And it doesn't necessarily happen with the same person, but it may happen with someone else that right now is in your life, and it's all good. And then maybe a year from now, it's not happening, so you're letting go. So I started seeing all that as different parts of the cycle of life, like that. In my opinion, they happen in cycles. So that's where the name came up from, how the name came up, and how I decided to place the three different cycles. That's the way I kind of ended up putting it, and the interludes do that, are there to kind of bookmark the beginning of each one.
I think that's why it resonated with me, and probably why it resonates with a lot of people, is because that's such a relatable experience. It's a
Mm-hmm.
human
Mm-hmm.
experiences, those cycles, those highs and lows, those
Mm-hmm.
repeats.
Mm-hmm.
When you're mentioning about a partner, like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while, sometimes you have those moments with a partner that you've been with for a long time where you're like, oh man, sometimes this is really hard, but then
Mm-hmm.
it comes back and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, yes, this is why we've stuck it out for so long.
Yeah, yeah, yes. And to me, that's very important. Being sorry to interrupt you, Ryan. To me, it's very important that music, like when I write songs, it's very important that I'm true as much as I can. Like I don't like writing for the sake of this is catchy, so let's just add the word clothes with bows or whatever. Like I like, yes, obviously you do think sometimes of trying to match a word to another, but like I still do it in a way that it always stays true to the message. Like it's important for me that the music has message, that it expresses something,
Yeah.
because to me that's art. Otherwise it's just whatever, technique or whatever you want to call it. So I'm very glad to hear that you found it relatable.
Well, I mean, even if I don't understand the language, one
Hmm.
thing that I've found listening to various different artists sending in us music in different languages, that even if I don't speak that language, when listening to it, I can get those feelings,
Hmm.
I can get those emotions, and I'm like, why am I feeling this sort of way? And then
Hmm.
you're
Cute.
looking up the lyrics and what they're writing about, and you're like, oh, that's why.
Hmm.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, music is one of those things where it's such a universal thing.
Absolutely. I think interpretation helps transcend language, and sometimes even the production of the song tells you a little bit more about what the lyrics are saying.
So, when talking about those interludes, one that really stood out to me was the conversation that you had with your grandparents. Why did you want to put that in this piece? Why did you feel it was important?
So the album is dedicated to them and to my other grandma, Fredespinda de Castro. The reason why it was so important for me to have that conversation with them is because they open up the love cycle, which is the second cycle in Ciclica. And my grandparents were the biggest example of respectful romantic love I've seen ever in my life. Like they were together for 70 years, 65 of those
Wow.
married. Yes. And the most amazing thing about it wasn't that they were together being all grumpy and crabby with each other, like, like it wasn't
Because yeah,
like
you can
that.
definitely see people who are like just
Yeah, I
they're
see people that
holding
have,
on for some reason.
but they're not, it's almost some people are together on paper, but they're not together anymore. Like they were together. And my mom says, like, I would ask my mom, were they always like that? My mom says, always. She says, growing up, they were always very loving, very respectful. They were always a team. It was such a beautiful thing to see. And in that interlude, I asked them because that was when it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I was used to going home for Christmas, and that year I couldn't. So I made it a point of recording conversations and with them, because obviously I knew they were getting older. Like my grandpa died in 2020, November 2020. He died at 20, yeah. Oh my gosh, 2021, I think. Oh no, 2020. See, all my dates are getting mixed up.
Yeah, what
And
even is time,
I
right?
know the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's all a blurb now. And he died in November that year, and then my grandma died July last year. And when before they passed, because he was 90 and she was 89, like I knew they were like, oh, time was escaping me, and like this pandemic wouldn't let me go see them. And they were two of my favorite people on planet Earth. I would talk with them like at least once a week, every week, and share stories about their coming up, their upbringing, and all that. Anyway, so to stick to the question, in that conversation, I was just engaged. My A few of my friends were getting married, and I was asking them, "What's good advice you'd give them?" I said at the in that that's what you hear me ask them. And then they start talking about advice, like, you know, like choose your battles. Like we don't fight, like unless it's like, and it's we've never fought, my grandma says. And he's like, you have to listen, you have to communicate. So to me, I was like, who's better than them to start the love cycle in my album when the album is dedicated to them, when they are the biggest example of a human romantic love I've seen in my life. And I have this conversation of them telling me what they recommend in a marriage. And the most beautiful thing about that audio at the end is that my grandpa says, "But you stick to what you're doing because you're doing great." Like he was basically saying, like, yes, it's nice you're getting married, but like he also kind of like gave me a pat on the back in this career, which is very tough. And to me, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I didn't expect that. I didn't ask him about that. So, and it just came out so naturally. So to me, it was like, it's perfect because it's my album. Like,
Hmm.
so that's why that interlude is there. It's so special to me.
Yeah, and I mean those moments that you have in there, those moments of kind of those interludes allow for a moment of processing, right? After you've listened to music, it prepares you for what's next, but
Hmm.
also to kind of understand and reflect on what you've already listened to. And I
Yeah.
really like that in albums where there's these moments of calm in
Hmm.
there, because it's always fun to have like banger after banger after banger, but eventually, if it's just so many things in a row, you go, oh, okay, I just need a moment. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
the cycles, you go through
Hmm.
those strong music and melodies, and then you take a moment to process it, to better
Hmm.
understand it, and I think
Hmm.
that just reflects the art.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's more or less what I wanted. I wanted people to understand, okay, we just exited that high energy. It ends with Kedonia, the first one, which is like it's a lot of things, but it's high energy in my opinion at the end, how it builds. And then it's like my grandparents start talking all of a sudden. You're like, what's going on? And it's meant to be that switch. It's like, whoop, but wait, now we're going into this. So that, as you said, it's como like take a breath, listen, what are they talking about? Where are we going? Yeah, I love taking people on journeys. I do love that.
Yeah, that's something I've heard with a lot of musicians, people who are like starting out building, because the streaming industry has kind of changed how people approach music, sort of thing. They just kind of put on their playlist of like, oh, these are my most liked songs, and you just kind of play through them. Whereas this one conversation I was having with someone, they were talking about the death of like listening parties, of putting on an album and putting on a record with a group of friends and then just absorbing
Mhm.
the content,
Mhm.
processing it, not just this information in sort of thing, just being in the moments.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I love that. Yeah, important to me.
In your album, you taking a lot of different influences, like of your Dominican background. How do you approach writing a song? How do you develop that melody, sort of thing? How do you know which instruments or feels that you want to put into there?
Okay. Yeah, so every song has a different story of how it came up. Um, as you mentioned, I did throughout the whole album, there is Dominican elements either in vocabulary, words I use, like the way I express myself in the lyrics, or instrumentation. Like some of them you maybe don't hear it as clearly, but they're there. Like we have these two instruments that are very Dominican. Tambora, which is like a percussive. I don't know. I don't want to call it the wrong thing. It's a tambora. I don't know another word for it, but you play like this. Yeah, like instead of like playing like congas like this, tambora you play it from the side and sometimes with a stick. And that's Dominican. And then the guira, which which is it's metallic and you like you hold it and then with a stick you're also like so we played with those instruments in different songs. And then same thing about subject matter. Sometimes I've talked about Dominican. It's like literally like in Queronía or Samaná, or sometimes it was just like the sorry, subject matter, instrumentation, vocabulary. Yeah, I'm missing one more. But the thing is that they're all, I wanted in all of them to have like a hint of, hey, I'm Dominican. Like just
Yeah,
make people be
exactly.
like, what is that word? And I'm like, it's a Dominican word. So that was very important for me in this process of when I started like focusing on writing music for my solo career. But then in terms of how every song comes up, it's entirely different. Like for example, Abul, the very last song of the album, is the very first single I released, ironically. And Abul is a slang word in Dominican Republic to say goodbye. That is kind of dying out. Like honestly, people, millennials and younger, don't use it. It's more like generation. Actually, I don't even think X. Some X maybe, but baby boomers and older, like my grandparents and my parents, they would say, "Abul, like goodbye, see you." And this song came up because oh my gosh, I was so frustrated with this person. A lot of people think I wrote that song about saying goodbye and letting go of an ex, but it's actually an ex friend, not an ex romantic partner.
Those sorts of
They
friend
hurt. Ooh,
breakups can be just as intense, if not more intense than a romantic one.
yes, indeed, indeed. Yes, absolutely. And it was this friend that I thought, like, I just didn't see coming this. Like, I don't understand. To this day, I think this person was going through their own thing. And I was living in Canada. And then when I returned, things weren't the same. And I just couldn't understand what was going on. And I was taking it personal for some time. And then I realized it's not me, is whatever this person's going through, but I need to let go for my own sanity. And I wrote that song, like, that was the quickest song I've written of the whole album because I was such in the moment. I was so fired up because I had seen them and I hadn't seen them in I don't know how long, like over a year after trying to reach them. And I saw them that day at a mutual friend's birthday. And they greeted me so coldly. They greeted me like it was someone an acquaintance when we used to be like really close. So, and to me, that was like, that's it. It's over. I need to let go. So, Abul came up like that. But then other songs like Kedonia, for example, I'm not gonna lie, it came up. I was at church and I was like, I'm listening to the pastor preaching, and I'm like, sometimes the melodies come first. In this case, the melody came, but with lyrics. It came together. And then I remember stepping away and Tut Ma Vi, same thing with the chorus of Tut Ma Vi, Tut Ma Vi, tutta la mia vita. That also came up at church. I get very inspired at church. The spirit is going. I go to the bathroom and I'm like recording so that I don't forget it.
Yeah.
And then from that, I developed the rest of the song. What do I want to say? Sometimes Debía Saberlo, for example, came up, and Si No No Sé, because actually Engandillo, those three came up because Ben, the music producer who I work with, he actually had been already kind of showing me these productions. So for those, I wrote bass inspired of with the music. So it really depends. Like I don't have one way of writing. But I do have to say, when I'm alone, usually my instinct is melodies and lyrics, and then from there I write the
You kind of
music.
build upon it. Okay.
Exactly. And like depending on the producers I'm working with, I'm like, I decide sometimes the song already kind of has its own vibe and tells me this is gonna be more of a bossa. Or sometimes I'm like, Samana, for example, I wasn't sure. I don't know what the song is. I remember being like, it's about DR, so we need to have Dominican for sure. But I don't want it to be a merengue bachata. Like I don't want to be so obviously forward. Like it's Dominican, you know. So that one was actually quite challenging. Same thing with Queronía. The songs that were specifically about Dominican, I didn't want them to be so obviously Dominican. I don't know why. I was like, I'm a hybrid now. I want to play with that. So the process is different for every song.
Well, music is interesting like that, right? You never know when inspiration's gonna hit,
No.
what that process is gonna be, but in the end, it creates an amazing sound, an amazing piece.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing that I saw found interesting when listening through the album was, a lot of it's in Spanish,
Mhm,
but then you have the moment "stop,"
mhm.
which is entirely
English, yeah.
in English, and I'm just wondering, kind of, what was your thought process on that? I'm just going to give you my quick interpretation
Yeah,
of
yeah.
just looking at the lyrics
Love
and
it.
everything. I feel that it's a call out to people who kind of say like, "Oh, this is my better half," sort of thing. Like, you're never a whole without a person, that, oh, you need to be in this sort of
Mhm,
relationship or things to be whole, to be complete, and it
mhm,
kind of reinforces these ideas of kind of codependency.
mhm, mhm.
That was kind of the feeling I was
No,
getting
you're
from it.
spot on. That you're spot on. Like, so stop. I don't know why it came to me in English. I don't know why. I mean, I live in Toronto, obviously, and sometimes certain things come to me in English. I do write in English. It's just that for some reason lately I'm more into my mother tongue. But that one came in English, and funny enough, it came from a post I saw on Facebook of this person who wrote about their current husband, saying, "Oh, like before you, life was black and white, and I was like basically miserable and all this stuff." And I'm like, "This is horrible. We have to stop." So it just like it came up like that. Stop writing things like that, saying we aren't full until we find the ideal partner. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's not true. That's not true. They should, to me, a partner, even a friend, any relationship should, your life should be a cupcake on its own. It should be delicious. When you're on your own, you should learn to enjoy your own time and value it, so that you don't let just anyone come in. And so that whenever someone comes in, it's because they add sprinkles, it's because they add meringue, they add goodness to it, and they don't take away. So yes, I can totally see how a partner might add light, but I don't like the
Exactly.
idea of you not having any light until they arrive. Like, yeah, I don't like that. And stop, because the reason why I wanted stop, I had written stop, like I think I wrote it in 2016. Like it's been years. And that one, I wanted it coming from the love cycle into the letting go cycle, because basically saying, yes, love is beautiful. It's awesome when you find a partner whom you can be fully yourself, whom you can trust, and all these awesome things when you have a like healthy relationship. Having said that, you should also have the best healthy relationship with yourself, and learn to let go when people aren't giving you that. And that's why stop was such an important interlude for me to have in between those cycles. So now we go into whoop, it's time to let go of these people too. And I love it that you caught it. It's exactly what you just said. It's exactly that.
I think it's just interesting because, in kind of Western culture, and it probably it permeates other cultures as well. There's this sense that you have to be in a relationship at
Mhm.
times, right?
Mhm.
That you have to be this, you have to be that. Otherwise, you're never going to be fulfilled. You're never going to be able to find purpose or be happy. And just as you mentioned, you have to be able to be happy and content with yourself in your
Mhm.
oneness, um,
Mhm.
before you can expect to have something positive with someone else. For, like, if you're going into a long-term relationship, like if you're getting engaged or going to get married, if you're not comfortable with yourself, and like you develop those codependencies, unfortunately that might lead to loathing or discontentment
Yeah.
down the line, sort of thing. If
Yeah.
someone is so like
Yeah. No,
gripped
it's terrible. Yeah.
onto you, you can't breathe.
No. Yeah. Exactly. You can't breathe, and the other. It's not fair to the other person either. Um. Yeah. You should be. To me, you should be free in, even if you're in a relationship. You should be free inside that relationship, whatever that is to different people. To me is being myself. Like to me is, I like dancing even if no one's watching. I like dancing however I feel the music. And like a former partner I had was like, stop, everyone's looking at you. Oh my gosh. Like to me, I was like, I wasn't free with that person because they constantly were like people are looking at you. I'm like, no, but like you do you, I do me. Like why do we need to? No, you should know yourself very well. Be happy with yourself. It doesn't mean we love everything about ourselves, mind you. I'm not saying that.
Of course, everyone has things to work on.
Yeah, exactly. We're not perfect, or it's not like I'm the best person, but it's more, yeah, it's more
That's
being
its own
careful.
problem.
That's a different thing. I'm not pro narcissism. That's different. It's more just pro like acknowledging that you have color in your life and light in your life alone without a partner. There's a lot of people that never marry or never like end up not having someone to live their lives with. And some of them do want that, long for that, but some of them are fine with that. And it's what you said, like in Dominican Republic, you go there and if you're like 25 and you're not married and you don't have a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, like they're gonna be like, like, oh no, you're gonna end up a jamona. Like that's the word they use for that, like someone that never marries. And it's like, well, maybe not everyone is meant for that. Like, and that should be okay.
Every person has, different things that they want
Yeah.
from life, and this whole idea that there is an ideal life that everyone must live is just not the way to approach existence. Like, everyone is different, every experience is unique, and we should allow people to explore what that means to be themselves.
Yeah. And I will just add to that. Also, the other thing that I find that that mindset does is that it makes people want to have a partner for the sake of having a partner. And that's very dangerous, I find, because sometimes you might settle just because you want to have a partner.
Oh,
And
and you might miss some red flags along the way.
uh exactly. And then next thing you know, yes, you have a partner, but this person doesn't respect you or belittles you or all these different things that are very important. It's more important to find the right partner for you than finding a partner for the sake of having a partner. That's the other thing I was just going to say. So sit, you do you. That's all.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and connecting with you. Where can people go to find your music?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan, again for having me. It's been same a super pleasure to hear your thoughts on it and see that you've enjoyed it. Everyone, you guys can listen to my music on Spotify, where all the streaming platforms. AnaliaOfficial.com is my website, and Analia AG Instagram, where I post my shows and all that. I'd love to come to Winnipeg sometimes. So we'll see. We'll see what we do.
Have any stories you'd like us to share, or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.